You've just landed inside Launch Street, the Innovation Podcast, where we interview top innovators out there shaking things up so you can innovate and differentiate and get further, faster in this crazy, cluttered world. And now, innovation thought leader and your super fly host, Tamara Kleinberg.
Tamara here. I am so excited for this interview, and I think as we get into it, you're going to realize why. I hope that you have a blank piece of paper and a pen out with you right now because you're going to need it for this one. I have on with me Aaron T. Walker. Now, you probably already know who he is, but just in case, he has inspired many through his leadership, mentorship, and consistent pursuit of excellence. He enjoys helping others and believes experience is a great teacher. Oh, I couldn't agree more. He has 35 years of entrepreneurship and marriage, and it's given Aaron a wealth of experience and just wisdom to pull from. And he continues to reach new heights and broaden his perspective of the terrain by examining his experiences and growing from them. This is a guy that's always learning and growing. Aaron, thank you so much for being on with us today.
Thank you very much. I certainly appreciate it.
Well, Aaron, I want you to tell our listeners a little bit about you and your journey. But before we do that, I'd like to start with a question that gets us all back into that beginner's mind and gets us kind of open-minded. So my question is, looking back, when you started as an entrepreneur, which I believe was at a very young age, what's the one thing you are glad you didn't know when you started out on this journey?
How hard it was going to be. It was very difficult, quite honestly. I needed a lot of grit and determination. So if I'd known exactly how hard it was going to be, I might have gone to work for Ford Motor Company or something. That's really not true, but it was difficult. A lot of the ups and downs was very difficult. So it's probably a good thing I didn't know.
Yeah, it's once you're in it, it's hard to turn back, I guess. Better not to know. So tell us a little bit about your story. How did you get to where you are today?
Oh, sure. That's a fun story. I'd love to share it. Even in light of it being difficult, there were a lot of fun times as well. I started really young, and you've already made that comment. When I was 13 years old, I went to work for a local pawn shop. My dad remodeled a health and fitness center and turned it into a pawn shop for one of his clients. And I asked him at the end of the renovation project, could I go to work for him? And he said, well, man, how old are you? And I said, I'm 13, but I only go to school across the street. I could work in the afternoons and on Saturday. Well, he hired me on the spot. I was amazed, but he said, anybody your age who wants to go to work, I'm going to put them to work. So he did, and I fell in love with that business. And you're not going to believe this. I was 15 years old when I decided I was going to make it a career.
Wow.
Went to summer school and night school for 2 years. I had enough credits in the 10th grade of high school to graduate, so I didn't have to go my junior and senior year. I didn't graduate, though. I wanted to graduate with the people I'd gone through school with, so I went for one class my junior year, and I didn't go at all my senior year except to register and to graduate. I only went twice my senior year. But I met a couple of guys that were investing in diamonds and gold with me, and they were in the insurance business, and I approached them one day and said, have you ever thought about going into the pawn shop business? And he asked the same question. He said, man, how old are you? And I said, I'm 18. And he said, I can't believe you want to already go in business for yourself at 18 years old. And I did. So anyway, to make a long story short, we formed a partnership. They checked on me at school a little bit, called the local church, and found out I was okay. I wasn't going to run off with the money. And so it was tremendously successful. The first 3 years, we paid off a 10-year loan. I saved the money, bought another store. And by the time I was 27 years old, I had 4 stores. And there was a Fortune 500 company in Fort Worth, Texas called Cash America. They now have over 1,100 stores. But they approached me, and through negotiation, we decided to sell the store. So we did. I was 27 years old, and I thought I was finished. And about 18 months later, I was getting in the bed in the middle of the day. And my wife came and woke me up one day, and she said, this is so unlike you. And don't tell anybody, but I gained 50 pounds during that 18 months, and I was bored to death. That was the problem. I worked so hard for so long, and then all of a sudden, we had a little bit of success, and I didn't have a schedule, and I actually became very bored. I went back to the pawn shop I started with and formed a partnership. I bought half the business, and Herb and I, the owner, we shared the work week for the next 10 years. I worked 3 days a week, and he worked the other 3 days of the week. And then one morning, on a Wednesday morning, about 7:30, I was headed to the office. And this is really kind of a dark time of my story. A pedestrian was crossing the street and didn't see me coming, and I hit the pedestrian. And unfortunately, he didn't make it. Three days later, he died at the Vanderbilt Trauma Unit, and it really rocked my world. And at that time, I realized that that could have been me. It could have been any member of my family. And it really made me think about my life being tremendously successful, but I wasn't sure there was much significance. And it really kind of changed my focus. And through that process, I decided to sell out. I was going to take a break, and I did. I took about 5 years, kind of regrouped. Robin and I built a new house. We did extensive travel, and I kind of had to get myself back centered. Then I went into the construction business, spent the next 8 years building high-end residence and small commercial. We took a small company to the number one builder 3 consecutive years during a very difficult building time, and decided at 50 years old I was going to retire. And a couple of my friends that I had been involved with for 2 decades encouraged me to coach. So I formed this company, View from the Top, and I've started coaching people down on a daily basis. And I facilitate mastermind groups and write curriculum and writing new products and having the time of my life. So,
wow.
In a 3-minute period, that's kind of been my journey for 35 years.
What a story. What I was writing down as you were talking was not just how impressive the entrepreneurial ventures have been and how young of an age you started, but also that, and I think this is an important lesson for the Innovation Roundtable people out there listening, is that when you know what you want, you can adjust your daily activities and your actions to pursue that. So at such a young age, you wanted to be in the pawn shop business, so you adjusted how you were going to go to school and what you were going to do to get there.
Well, I tell everybody that I make up for the lack of education with grit and determination and perseverance. My wife even uses it against me now. She says if she wants something done, she says, I'm not sure you could do this. And it's like, oh man.
She's on to you.
Yeah, and so it lights me up. Well, I think any of us can do that. The problem is that we don't know how to do delayed gratification. And Robin and I elected at an early age, we could have lived a higher lifestyle, but at that time, it was enough money for us to live, but we took an $18,000 a year salary for 10 years.
Wow.
And we even had 2 children during that period of time. Now, we weren't paupers and we didn't do without, but we didn't live extravagant. We drove used cars and lived in a very moderate house, but we poured all of the money back into the business. If I hadn't have done that, Cash America in Fort Worth, the Fortune 500 company, wouldn't have been interested in buying me because there wouldn't have been anything there. I would have lived on all the profits, spent all the money, and there wouldn't have been anything to buy.
So let's dig into that, because I think what you're saying is incredibly important. And the concept of delayed gratification, this idea of you're building something and, that reward doesn't happen overnight. I think especially right now, in particular in the media, we always see these, overnight success stories, these, out of their dorm room and it's happening. So we talk a little bit about why kind of delayed gratification can work for you and also how it can work against you.
Yeah, I don't know of many times that it can necessarily work against you. For you as much as it can work against you. You need to delay gratification. And I tell young guys that I coach now, I say, you're not your dad. Your dad's got 20, 25 years on you, and the way they live now, you can't live that way now. You've got to reinvest the profits back into the business. And that's where most businesses get in trouble. They'll start up, they'll do okay, they'll make a little bit of profit, and the first thing people do is they'll go out and they'll buy a bigger house. They'll increase their mortgage. They'll get the new car. Instead of saving the money and buying and paying cash, they'll go out and finance it to the hilt.
Yeah.
And they're doing okay as long as their business does okay. And then when they have one hiccup, something's going to suffer. Your business can't grow, or you can't make your payments. And, I'm a person of faith, and I believe what the Bible says. It says that the borrower is servant to the lender. And that is so true.
Yeah.
Because one hiccup, the bank's going to come get it. The car company's going to come and get it. So all we try to do, though, is to say live within your means. Just pay for the things that you get. When we were raising our children, we had a little savings program. Every dollar they saved, I would match it. And when they got 16 years old, ever what they had, they went and bought a car. My youngest daughter came home with a new pair of jeans, and she said, "Hey, how you like these jeans?" I said, "Well, they're nice." She goes, "They were only $50." And I said, "No, they were 100." And she said, "No, they were 50. Here's the receipt." I said, "No, if you put that 50 in the bank, you'd have 100 today because Dad would have matched it." Well, she took the jeans back, so I got tickled. She learned her lesson. But she also had way more than enough money to buy the new car when she turned 16 years old. So it's just the delayed gratification. She said, "Hey, I can have a nicer car later, or I can have these jeans today." And so we just tried to instill in our children to delay the gratification. Now they're 29 and 32, and there's no consumer debt, and they've done really well, and they pay cash for things that they buy. And it's just how you teach your children. But it's a mindset, and it's just like, hey, let's put it off, and we'll get it later, when we can afford it.
Yeah, it's so interesting with Mike. So my kids are young, they're 10 and 6. But our deal in our house is for every dollar you make, 70% has to go into the bank, into savings, and 30% you're allowed to spend. So if you want a toy if you wanted those jeans or a toy that's $50, you actually have to make 3 times that.
Sure.
To actually be able to afford it for that same reason of delayed gratification. And, just to kind of wrap it up back into business, I was interviewed the other day for an article, and the person said to me, "How does it feel to be an overnight success?" And I laughed and I said, "Well, after 20 years and a lot of coffee,
right.
It feels great."
Yeah. This you have to put your 10,000 hours in. I've been involved in mastermind groups for 20 years now, either participating or facilitating mastermind groups, and we talk about that a lot. And so it's just your perspective. It's just the way you look at things.
Yeah, I want to dig into the whole mastermind thing. It's I'm a big fan of them as well. And I think a year and a half ago, maybe even 2 years ago, I started this rigorous mastermind with a colleague of mine, and he's in Chicago. So every Tuesday morning we meet via phone at 8:30, and the only reason we miss it is if media calls or vacation or illness.
Sure.
And I think having that mastermind and that person has really accelerated my business. And I know you're a big believer in mastermind. So can you share kind of why you think that's so important? And I think you host them as well, right?
Yeah, I do. You go back and look at some of the most successful people in history, the Carnegies, and they attribute their total success to the mastermind group. And here's what I tell people is that other people see you differently than you see yourself. Mm-hmm. And there is great wisdom in the counsel of the multitudes. And when you have wise people around you that are non-biased, they will speak truth into your life, not what you want to hear, right. But they'll speak truth into your life. And that's what the mastermind has done for me all these years. I'll tell you how I got involved in my first mastermind. So I go to the Chamber of Commerce breakfast in 1995, and there's this guy speaking about a radio show he had just started in Nashville. So I invited him down, and I said, "Hey, don't you come see my store? It's just down the road, And he came and loved it. And he said, "You're just the kind of store I'd love to be an advertiser on my new radio show." So he told me who he was, and I said, "I never even heard of you." And he said, "Well, just give me a try." And I said, No, thank you. I get advertising opportunities every day, and I'm not interested. And so he persisted, and he said, "Listen, I'll give you a week free. Just give me a try and see what it does for your business. It's a local station." I thought, well, what have I got to lose, right? I mean, it's free.
It's free.
And so that was my first encounter with Dave Ramsey. And so Dave has become a very good friend over all these years. There's not a day gone by in 20 years that a business I've owned has not been an advertiser on his show. So we've been on there every day now for 20 years. When in 95, Dave came to me, and we formed a relationship. We became friends, and I was not only an advertiser, we became friends. And he took me to Amelia Island. He and Sharon and Robin and I, we went down there on vacation, and there was a speaker there that spoke named Bob Buford. And Bob is the author of a book called Halftime. And it was a really good time for me to read this book, and it talked merely about how to live a life of success and significance. I mean, that's what it was basically about. Well, that really resonated with me, and I came back and thought about it, and then it wasn't too many years after that I had the automobile accident, and I put the two together, and it kind of transitioned my life. But Dave came to me. I was at a concert in Nashville. Mercy Me, I believe, was playing one of the Christian groups in an arena in Nashville, and Dave saw me there, and he said, "Hey," he said, "I've got this mastermind group. We meet in my office. I'd love for you to come participate." So I said, "Well, I'm not that familiar with it, but I'd be happy to check it out." So I went out, fell in love with it. 10 guys. They were just awesome. Ken Abraham is one of the guys in the group. He's a New York Times author. He's got about 100 books in print. Dan Miller, 48 Days to the Work You Love. Dan's a New York Times bestselling author as well, and a number of other guys that was similar to that, but their careers were new also. But we were all kind of starting together 20 years ago. But these guys were so credible, and their character was just impeccable. And they were men that you just want to be around because they challenge you to do your best. And so for that reason, I've just completely fallen in love with being involved in Mastermind, because those guys have a passion for doing it right. They want to grow, yet they want to be the family guys that they should be as well. And it's just taken me, I feel like, to the next level. It's been kind of a game changer for me.
You said something in there that I want to dig on a little more, which is, these guys really challenge you to do your best, to be your best. What does it feel like, and how do you know when you're around those people?
Well, because they call you out. They know when you're slacking, and they know when you could do better. There was one of the guys called me on a Saturday morning. I was at Ace Hardware, and it was unusual to talk to these guys on a Saturday, because we do business through the week, and then we're with our families on the weekend. And I looked down and I saw who it was, and I answered the phone. And I said, "Hey," and he said, "Hey, have you got a minute?" And I said, "Sure." He said, "Well, I know you've been going through a tough time." He said, "But the Lord's given me a word for you." And I said, "Oh, really?" I said, "Well, hold on. This is going to be good." I said, "Let me go to the parking lot where I can hear you."
let me put the hammer down. Hold on.
So I go out to the parking lot, and he said, "You ready?" And I said, "Well, sure, I'm ready. The Lord gave you a word for me. I'm ready to hear it." He said, "You're wearing everybody to death."
Whoa.
And the phone just went silent. And I said, "Excuse me?" Because I thought I misheard him. He said, "I'm not kidding, man. You won't get off that topic you've been talking about for months now, and you're wearing us to death. And I'm certain you're wearing everybody around you to death." And I didn't know what to say. I just sit there. I'm like, somebody hit me with a sack of nickels. I didn't know what to say. And he goes, "Listen, man," he said, "anything in our past that we've had to deal with is in our past, right? We can't undo anything. Anything you've said, done, it's over. And this deal you've been dealing with, it's over. It's time to move on. It's time to take the chains from around your neck and move on. I got to go. I'll see you." And hung up.
Wow.
Well, there he left me standing in the parking lot of Ace Hardware. Just told me I'm worrying everybody to death. And I didn't know what to do. I didn't know whether to cry, go back in Ace Hardware, or go home. And so I just stood there for a minute, and I thought, you know what? That guy loves me enough to tell me the truth. And not many people will call you out and tell you the truth. Well, I'm going to tell you something. I got over what I was dealing with, and I was able to move on. It changed my life. And if people won't call you out like that, they really don't care about you.
Yeah.
And in order to call somebody out like that, you have to spend an inordinate amount of time with them to build that reputation, to build that that sense of care that you would have for one another. And so I can sit here the rest of the day. We don't have enough time, and tell you story after story like that, where we each have called each other out, help them, encourage them, motivate them on. But you can't do that to a perfect stranger. And the only way that you can do that is to spend time with people and build that relationship.
Hence the mastermind group. And I think it's one of the mistakes that I see entrepreneurs make is they tend to accidentally or on purpose surround themselves by people who turn out to be yes men. They love everything about their idea. They love everything about what they're doing. And you're right. It's the people and the moments that slap you across the face where you actually learn the most and grow the most.
Yeah, we never learn anything through success.
Yeah, right.
We only learn in the valleys. The mountaintops, you're just enjoying, the fruit. And so we learn in the valleys. We learn in the difficult times. It's when I tear things up trying to fix them that I learn how not to do it next time. And so that's when we learn. And these guys are around you to encourage you, to push you to your limit, to go. But then they're there to go, whoa, hold on. You've gone far enough. Recently there was a business opportunity I was going to do. And I'm a big believer in getting the opinions of wise counsel. Yeah. And I always go to people and say, hey, I'm thinking about doing this, thinking about buying this, thinking about investing in this or buying this business. What do you think? Well, I thought it was a good idea. And I gave all the reasons I thought it was a good idea. Individually, I went to 12 different people. 11 of the 12 told me not to do it. And I'm like, I never saw it coming. I never saw it from their perspective. But see, they were non-biased. They had nothing to gain or lose. in that transaction. And so they were able, with confidence, to tell me the truth.
That's so great. So, I'm there's kind of a couple things going through my head. And if I sound a little stunned, it's because I start to think about all those moments where people slapped me across the face that were so wonderful, really, at the end of the
It's
day.
not
But
fun at the time, right?
no, it hurts pretty deeply at the time, but
Right.
it is where you get the most value. I mean, I had someone recently, about a year ago, say, kind of same thing, call me up and just say, hey, you're spinning your wheels. What are you doing? Like, you're not moving. You need to move. And I'd gotten stuck. And I didn't even see it because I was quote unquote busy. And busy, I think, can get in the way of success because it seems like you're making progress, but it's really just busy. And they're very different things. But I want to loop back to your mastermind group and this amazing group of people that you've surrounded yourself with, and the kind of think the fortune of being able to not just know them, but to be with them from the start and grow. And I'm curious, what's the one thing that kind of you've learned out of that experience in that mastermind group and having those relationships that you wish every wannabe entrepreneur, new entrepreneur knew?
Oh, me. That's a whole new. That could be a whole podcast show within itself. But I'll summarize it into a couple of main topics. First and foremost is being around people of integrity and being around people that are not a facade, because I don't like facades. I'd rather have a few friends that were genuine and real as to be in a group of people that were facades that I didn't know what was behind it. And those guys were always relaxed. They'd let their hair down. They didn't have to impress you. They didn't have to put on a show. They didn't have to make you think they were something that they weren't, because guys would come in and they'd be upset. And those guys are real, just like me and you, and they would be having a hard time, or something would be bad in their business and they wouldn't know where to turn or what to do. They were real. They didn't make you think, I've always got it together. And I've tried to kind of carry that on as well, is that we don't all have it together. There are times, I don't care who you are, it doesn't matter the amount of zeros that you've got in your bank balance. You all go through the same trials and tribulations. It's just that some of them are magnified sometimes because the dollar amount possibly is bigger. So I guess the genuineness of being around those guys. And the other thing is knowing that they do the right thing even when it costs them. And I've seen those guys go to the end and do the right thing ethically and morally, even when it costs them possibly some opportunity. So those three things would probably be tops.
Wow, those are powerful. So I want to back up to something you said. You kind of brushed over it in your kind of story of who you were, but the whole reason I wanted to interview today because it was something I heard you say on a different podcast I was listening to, and it was this phrase that kind of blew my mind. It was like I heard you say it, and then I had to kind of stop and go, "Wait a minute, wow, am I doing that? Wait, what?" Like those things, those moments, those aha moments where you hear something that you can't wrap your head around immediately because it's so big. So you said success to significance, and you just said it again at the beginning of this podcast. I want you to delve into that because it blew my mind.
Well, here's what I discovered later, and I wished I had discovered it earlier. And we all do this, and I don't want to fault anyone for doing this because it's not necessarily wrong. It's just the sooner you can learn it, the better off I think you'll be. I spent most of my energy trying to be successful. And my dad never made over $15,000 a year in his life, ever. He was a general contractor. And when I say general contractor, I mean the guy that swung the hammer, the guy that dug the footing. He was the guy that physically built the house. So a lot of my motivation in being successful financially was I knew what I didn't want to do. I didn't want to work that hard, to make a living. And I have great admiration and respect for my dad. He passed away in '06. One of the things that he did do well was he built relationships and he cared about people. And when he died in '06, I stood there in the receiving line for 6.5 hours while people lined up to the parking lot for 6.5 hours, coming through, paying their respects. And not one person said, your dad had a nice boat, lived in a nice place, or had plenty of money. But every person said, let me tell you the difference your dad made in my life. Let me tell you what your dad did at this point in my life when I needed somebody. Let me tell you when your dad was always there. And let me tell you the impact that your dad had in my life. And I sat there and took note of that for 6.5 hours, and I thought, tangible things are important while we're enjoying them, but in the grand scope of things, the legacy that we're going to live and that we're going to leave to others once we're gone, what is that going to look like? And I just transferred that in my mind and said, it's significant. What my dad did was very significant. And he was successful, not financially, but he lived a very successful and significant lifestyle. So people that have money now that say money's not important, I tell people to run from those guys because they're lying to you. It is important. You go try to pay the mortgage or the car note and you don't have any money, it's all of a sudden very important.
Yes, it is.
But what I want people to realize is don't make it their God. Don't make it the most important thing. What I want you to do is to add value. Wherever you're at, add value. And if you'll add value, you will be successful financially. But what I want people to do is to look outward. I've got a client right now that told me he made $3.5 million last year, and he felt very kind of bored, and he felt like he was successful financially, but something was missing. And we started talking about how much he gave and how much he was involved in civic activities and how many scholarships he set up or he have any endowments, and there was none of that. There was none of that going on. And I said, well, that's exactly why you feel the way you do, because it's not all about you. It's about your community. It's about your wife. It's about your children. It's about your relationships with your peers and colleagues. And so what I try to do now when I coach people is to say, make all the money you can and then choose to do the right things with it. And some of the right things you do doesn't revolve around you. It revolves around others. So therefore, if you do these things, you will be successful. You'll do good. I can teach you how to make money. It's not that hard to make money, but it is hard to live successfully and significantly. And so I'm just trying to transfer that to others.
Let me ask you a question on that. So one of the things that we do here at the Shug and the business that I run is, we have a big whiteboard up and there is a dollar value, that we're going towards, but there's also actually inventors impacted. Because our goal is to be that rising tide that elevates all entrepreneurial boats. That's what, keeps us up at night and gets us to work in the morning. So we try to infuse some of kind of what you talked about with significance into our business. What advice would you have for other entrepreneurs about that? So they don't kind of wait until they get bored to get to the point where they realize.
Yeah. I hear this all the time from people I coach. And I coach guys that make $50,000 a year, and I coach guys that make $3 or $4 million a year. And almost invariably, when people are not striving to live a significant life, I hear this, well, when I make a little more money, then I'll do that.
Right.
Well, that's not true. And I'll tell you why it's not true. It's a matter of the heart. It's not a matter of the dollars. And money just magnifies what's already there. So if you're not doing on some scale now, you won't do it later. We choose to be happy. Happiness is a choice. It's not a trait. And it's the same way with living a significant life. We choose to be. I'll tell you a funny little story.
Yeah.
A couple of days ago, I was in Starbucks, and I've got a client I meet up there, and there's this lady 2 persons ahead of me. Well, she's driving me crazy because she's asking 4 million questions. She's asking about every combination of coffee known to man. And I'm standing there. I hadn't even had any coffee yet, maybe 1 cup. And I'm like, lady, this is Starbucks. The menu was the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow.
And has been for years.
Yeah, and so I'm like, order something. And so I'm sitting there thinking I'm getting ill, and man, I'm just dying inside. And I'm thinking, I got to do something nice quick. I got to change my attitude. Well, when the guy ahead of me ordered his, and he ordered breakfast and everything, I'm like, man, this is coffee. I didn't know you were going to eat breakfast. So he ordered breakfast and his coffee. And I told the cashier, I said, hey, I got him. And the guy turned around and looked at me, and he said, what? And I said, I got you. And he said, why? And I said, man, I want to bless you. And he looked at me, and he like this puzzled look. And really what I was doing was for me. I had to do something nice quick because I was about ready to kill somebody because this lady had irritated me so bad. Well, my point in the story, it turned out to be a really nice conversation with that guy. He said, do you do that often? And I said, well, actually I do. I said, I enjoy doing that. It's just a little random act of kindness, and I enjoy doing it. But today I had to do it because I had to change my attitude. Well, my point is our attitude is the only thing we're in complete control over. We're not in control of anything else. And I chose to be happy at that moment. I could have chosen to stay irritable and it ruined half my day, but I chose at that moment to be happy. And I had to do something nice, and it changed my whole disposition. We can do the same thing with charitable giving. We can do that with significance. We elect what we want to do. You don't have to do it on a grand scale. We teach our grandchildren to do that. We'll go and we'll secretly buy dinners for people that are in restaurants. It's fun for them. They'll pick out various tables and we'll buy it, and they'll say, they call me Big A. They say, Big A, do you think they know it was us? I said, it doesn't matter if they knew it was us or not. It's not about them. It's about us. And we want to be generous. And the only way that we're going to be generous is if we do it intentionally. And it's the same way significantly. Start out small. If you can't afford to do something grand, go help somebody on a Saturday, or help a client that couldn't pay, pay it forward. And so I'm just saying, do it on a small scale, and then you'll do it on a big scale.
I'll tell you, I was in an airport once, and my bank had accidentally canceled my cards on me, thinking I was a thief. And I'm glad, there's security there, but I was trying to get a cup of coffee at 5 o'clock in the morning at the airport. And,
no money.
Yeah,
right.
And I got nothing. And I get up to the Dunkin' Donuts counter and they're swiping. I'm like, no, try again. It's not working. The lady behind me just leans over and goes, don't worry, I got this. And it was the nicest thing really anybody's ever done that I will never forget. And, I don't know how she felt walking away, but I know I felt amazing being on the other side of that. And this is, your Starbucks story. And we've all been behind that person at the grocery store too, where they pull out the check and they only start the check after the total comes up, and you're going, come on, right. Move it. But wow.
Think about what you just said. You said that's one of the nicest things anyone had ever done. A $5 cup of coffee.
Yeah.
Okay, think about how many people that we could do that for just on that small scale.
Well, yeah, I think that this is a great reminder that, it doesn't take a lot to put some significance into your life.
Recently, I sent out a little 2-paragraph challenge to a mastermind group that I'm a member of now. And I said, listen, we talk about business all the time. We share resources. We do. I get it, and I enjoy that. But here's what I want you to do. Every member in this group, there's about 30 people in this particular group. I said, what I want you to do is go out there this week and do random acts of kindness, just 1 or 2 this week, and report back and how it went. Well, we spent the next month going over stories, the lives that were changed. It was amazing. The next 30 days, what we were able to talk about as a group in that mastermind group. And people's lives were changed. And not only the person's doing it, but the recipients as well. And so it is just so humbling to be a part of that. But you don't have to have a lot of money to do it. You can do it right where you're at today.
See, there you go. Go buy somebody a cup of coffee. That's all it takes. I want to talk about your entrepreneurial experience before we run out of time. You've had a very illustrious career as an entrepreneur, and I'd like to get your perspective on, in today's world, what you think it takes to succeed as an entrepreneur.
Well, I stated it earlier, just for me, of course, education is huge, and you don't have to have a degree to have an education. I don't have a degree, but I feel like I've got a pretty fair education with experience. I've owned 8 or 9 businesses and started a long time, 36 years, so I've got experience. One of the ways that I got that experience, though, is I'm an avid reader, and I promote reading all the time. You don't wake up smarter, right? Just because you go to bed, you don't wake up smarter. So I'll read 2 to 3 hours every day, something that's educational and something that I'm enjoying. So I would challenge you to do that, and that would really help the cause of being a successful entrepreneur. The next thing is my mom, when I was a child, there was a little saying. Well, first of all, she wouldn't allow the children. There were 4 children. I've got 2 brothers and a sister. She would not allow us to say can't. She'd say, you might not be able to do it, but you're going to try. And she had a little saying, and this saying's kind of become fun. Matter of fact, there's people around the globe quoting it now. It's kind of hilarious to me. I'm going to have some shirts made up. And it says, can't couldn't do it, and could did it all. And I've kind of lived my life that way. It's kind of been my mantra. It's kind of like, if I want that bad enough, I'm willing to forego something else, because there's always a trade-off. You can't have everything. And so Greg McCowan wrote a great book called Essentialism, and it's where you decide between the non-essentials and the vital few. And the analogy is we can't do 15 things well, but you can be an inch wide and a mile deep. And if you'll exert the same amount of effort and energy on these three things, you can become an expert. And probably some of the encouragement that I would give young entrepreneurs now is don't try to service the world. Pick a niche market and specialize in that. And just before you think you've got the niche market down, cut it in half, and you might be getting close to where you need to be to focus. Because the problem with most entrepreneurs is they try to be all things to all people, and you can't do it, not and be successful. You've got to pick your niche market and go deep. You know how to advertise. You know where they eat. You know where they sleep. You know what they drink. You know who they are. You know what they look like. And go after that person. The third thing that I would suggest is have plenty of grit, have plenty of determination, and have great amounts of perseverance. And if you'll do those and spend your 10,000 hours and delay your gratification, there's no question in my mind that you can succeed as an entrepreneur.
I'm smiling over here because, so just to summarize it, read, no can't, niche, and grit and perseverance. I mean, what tried and true principles? No fad, no trend, just these are things that work and things that we can really all do.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I mean, I came from a family that didn't provide an opportunity to get a huge degree. And out of that, I'm a big believer in asking, right? Because if you don't ask, the answer is no. And so I'm a big believer. And I've been told no probably more than yes, but it's opened a lot of doors. I have created the opportunity. When you knock, if there's no door, create one. Go there and ask,
Yeah, I always joke around that I'm going to write a book that's called Because I Asked. Because people always say to me, well, how did you get Aaron on your show? Well, I asked.
Yeah. Don't be so timid.
Yes.
I mean, they can't eat you up. Just
That's
go
right.
ask.
Well, and you got to have a thick skin, and it's hard. In fact, I was having lunch with a colleague who's moving from a job to being an entrepreneur, and she said, well, how do you do it? How do you get on the phone and sell when it's you're selling? I said, well, you got to have a thick skin. To your point, you get a lot of no's. It's really not personal. You got to hear it, take the feedback, and keep moving.
Here's what's funny is we think other people are kind of talking about us, or they're at home saying, well, he didn't do this, or he asked and they told him no. And I call it the 18-45-60 rule. When you're 18 years old, of course, everybody's talking about you, you think. When you get 45, you just don't care. And then when you get 60, you find out they weren't talking about you to begin with. And so that's kind of the way it is. Let me just be the first to tell you, people are not sitting at home talking about your successes and failures.
All right, entrepreneurs out there, if you get one piece of advice to take away, that is it. They're not talking about you for days on end, so go ask. Love it. So you do a lot of coaching. That's right, yeah? So
yeah, I do one-on-one coaching. I coach men. I told you I niche down.
Yep.
Nothing against women whatsoever. It's just that my world has been men in these mastermind groups and these accountability groups, and I coach men one-on-one. And kind of my niche market are young entrepreneurs, from 27 years old up to about 50 years old. That's kind of, I'm not saying I wouldn't coach younger and I wouldn't coach older. That's just kind of my niche market. Most of them are wantrepreneurs, solopreneurs, entrepreneurs, somebody that's trying to make it. They've made it and they want to do it better, or they've really, really made it and they're trying to develop a succession plan or second generation plan. But I do coach men one-on-one.
What do you think is the aha moment or the pain or opportunity even that they're experiencing that makes them pick up the phone to call you?
It's various things. I pointed out one that's kind of my kind of holistic view at coaching. A lot of people are success coaches and they can take you to the next level financially. And then there's other people that have nothing to do with the success side, but they just look at things related to your identity or your ideals or relationships or your faith and your career. They just look at things that you're interested in doing as an individual. And I kind of do both. I've been fortunate enough to have a wonderful wife for 35 years that stood by me through thick and thin, through the lean times and the good times. And then I've had a few successful businesses. And so I want guys to win at work, and I do. I can teach you how to make money. I can teach you to be successful. But I don't want you to do it at the expense of your family. And I tell guys every day, if you're going to cheat somebody out of time, cheat the office. Because you can make more money, that you can start another business, but you only get one opportunity with that family. You only get one chance with your wife. You only get one chance with your children. There's not many do-overs. And when they're gone, they're gone. And so I just encourage guys, spend an inordinate amount of time at home, be there for your children's events if at all possible, make time for your wife. And, here's the thing. We work to make money to live a life.
Yep.
I don't want people to make work their life and then come home to a family that don't know them.
Yeah. So I went on your website and you have an assessment, something for people to fill out to kind of quote unquote qualify them, right? And so that you can, I'm assuming, know a little bit about them before you even pick up the phone and talk to them.
Right.
And, it took me, I don't know if you gauge the time it takes people to take it, but I got a little tripped up because I was so intrigued by the questions that I kind of stopped moving forward because I wanted to analyze the questions. They're not your usual questions that people ask on the site to tell me a little bit about you before I talk to you on the phone. So I wanted you to talk a little bit about those questions and why you ask them.
Well, you can ask a document with questions that are not relevant to practical application, right? There's all kind of questions, but those questions I don't care about. What I want to know about are real life questions. And some of the questions that you're referring to relate to like your identity. Mm-hmm. I mean, who are you as a person? If you don't know who you are as a person, it's hard to go forward from there because we don't know the basis by which we're working on. And so, I ask questions like, are you living a life really true to yourself?
Right.
I asked a client the other day, I said, what is it that you know and you're lying to yourself? Well, that question really rocked his world because he called me the next day and he said, to be honest with you, there are things. There are things I'm sticking my head in the sand and I'm looking the other way. But the truth is, I really know the answer. And I said, well, we got to deal with that. Sometimes I coach people financially and they don't open their mail. And I said, you think it's going to go away because you don't know? Well, we do the same thing, though, with relationships. We do the same things with our children, with our career, with relationships of people that we work with. We know the truth, yet we don't want to deal with it. And I teach people to deal with the truth. Like, hey, just call me out on it. Just tell me. And I think that's what the masterminds have kind of prepared me to do is like, it's going to sting, it's going to hurt, but just go ahead and hit me. I mean, I know I need it, and I know the answer is going to be tough, but let's get it out of the way and let's deal with it. Now let's get to the truth, and then we can go forward. So that's what this personal assessment is, and it talks about things like, do you have a clear vision? Do you know where you're going? And a lot of people say, oh, yeah. Well, then you pin them down, and they're like, well, they really don't know where they're going. They're really living reactively, not proactively. And I teach people to live proactive, live on purpose. That's why that's my tagline, live on purpose. And then we talk about your desires and goals, your ambitions. Do you have those things? Well, sure. Well, what is it? Well, then they can't tell you. They say, well, I want to do this and that. And I said, have you got it written down? No, I haven't. I said, well, that's not a goal. Because if it's not a SMART goal, if it's not written down, it's just a dream. Because we don't know how we're going to get there. And we go through that whole process, and then we go through with ideals. We find out exactly what your ideals are, and are you living up to those ideals? And a lot of people are not living up to their ideals. Here's the thing. People are just trying to make it through the day with not a real good indication of where they want to go in the future. And so we just try to live the life that you want to live. I don't try to tell people how to live. I just want to help you get where you want to go. And if we don't do the personal assessment and discover who you are, we certainly don't know how to take you where you want to go. And so people have needs, on this personal assessment. It talks about, there's physical needs we have. There's emotional needs that we have. There's financial needs that we have. And we see if you're trying to meet your physical goals, emotional goals, your financial goals. And then we talk about relationships, which is the number one. I don't know if you asked this question at the end, but I'll repeat it if you do. If I had one thing to tell entrepreneurs to do more of, and it's to build long-lasting relationships that matter. It is your key to success. I don't care what you're doing. If you're cutting grass or you're running a multi-million-dollar operation, the number one key is to have meaningful relationships. And I teach people how to do that. It's like call them and check on them when you don't need anything, right? When your telephone rings and you look down and it's Billy, something comes to your mind. I don't care who it is. Anybody that comes to your phone, when that phone rings, something comes to your mind. It's either they're energizing, they're empowering, they suck the life out of you. Oh my goodness, what do they want? Something comes to your mind. Well, what comes to other people's mind when your name shows up on their phone? Do you only call when you need something, or you want something, or you got bad news, or you're Eeyore, or you're going to drag them down? See, I don't want to be that guy. I want to be like, man, I can't wait to answer this phone because he's got something good to say. He's positive. He's energetic. He calls me and checks on me, even when he doesn't want anything. You know, when you get that phone call, hey, how you doing? I'm good. Well, listen, while I got you on the phone, let me ask you. Well, I won't say you liar. That's the only reason you called me. And I call people daily just to check on them. And they're waiting on the call. They're always waiting on the call. I mean, the question. And then the question doesn't come. And then when they hang up, they go, he really cared. He really called to check on me. And it leaves an indelible impression on people's minds because then you have built a relationship that matters. So we go through that personal assessment and kind of figure out who you are.
You know, those relationships are key, aren't they? I will say that
100%.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest key reason for my success is the people that I've surrounded myself with and the time I put into it. And, you know, I always joke around with my family that, because they're, you know, my kids always laugh at me and say, what do you do all day? Do you just talk to people? And I was like, yeah, I spend my day talking to people and building relationships. And that's what my 9 to 5 is. And it couldn't be better. And it's really quite, don't you find it also kind of quite internally rewarding to just, I mean, we're humans. We want to connect.
Sure. And when you do it and you really are sincere and you're genuine, man, you can build so many lasting relationships that when you do need something, you know, Vanderchuck wrote a great book, Jab, 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 Right Hook. And it's a boxing analogy. And what that means is give, give, give. And then you have permission to ask.
Yeah, it's so true. So before we move on to what I call the questions with impact round, which is kind of our final round, you were kind enough to share with me that you are going to do a most generous giveaway for our listeners. So let's share that.
Fun. Sure. Well, there's actually 3 different documents that I use to help people. And I don't want to sell them to you. I want to give them away to your listeners. And so let me tell you a little bit about what they are. The first one we've just talked about, and I wish, you know, that there was plenty of time and we could talk about all of them, but time doesn't allow. But the personal assessment, we just wrote down in great detail. The second one is a document that I created called What Do I Want? And I know that sounds like duh, but really, when you start asking yourself specific questions like, if I were to get up tomorrow morning and there were no geographic or financial limitations, what would I do with my life tomorrow? Or what character qualities do I want to bestow upon my children? And if my wife or husband could do this or that and I could help them, what do I need to do to make that happen? There's about 30 questions on this. And my wife and I, you know, we sit out on our front porch and we say, what do we want 3 years from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now? What do we want our life to look like? Because we're very intentional about the way we live our lives. So you go through and you answer these. They're in a Word document. You can save them on your computer and you can alter them, change them. It just keeps it before you. And a lot of people say, well, that's great. Now I know who I am. Now I know what I want, but I don't really know what to do next. So I've actually created a course in this, but it's called Steps to a Productive Day. And it's a 4-page document, and it starts you out early in the morning when you first get up, and it walks you through your entire day. There's about 35 or 40 different line items on it, where it gets you in a methodical train of thought to where you can go through and have a successful day. And really all life is, you know, a series of successful days. And we do this, we have a course, and it's called Steps to a Productive Day, to where you get a 3-minute video from me, 30 consecutive days. And it walks you through this entire document, and it helps you, you know, develop your quiet time, meditation, spiritual disciplines, your motivation, exercising, educational reading, podcasts, TED Talks. And it goes through this. If you could only do certain things today, what would it be? And these are the things I've got to do today. And it kind of is a to-do list on steroids. And it kind of gets you focused to being successful. The other thing, kind of going back to your previous question, if you want to be a really successful entrepreneur, be steady and continuous. And you want to do the same things, even when they're boring, even when they're repetitious. Do them over and over and over. Be consistent in doing those things. And then one day, all that seed you throwed out, when it waters, when the rain hits it, stuff will start growing. And it's the same thing with your business. And it is monotonous. It is tiring sometimes to do that. But this is what this Steps to a Productive Day teaches. And I'll tell you what we've done. We've created a landing page. It's viewfromthetop.com/tomorrow.
Excellent.
TAMARA. And you can go there, and I'll make these for free. All your guests can have them. Use them, repurpose them, whatever you want to do with them.
Wow. So, hey, Roundtable, make sure you go get these because this is a huge, high impact giveaway that not most guests do and that Aaron is doing that you're getting. And Aaron, that is so, first of all, thank you. That is so generous. And I can't wait to go to the landing page and download those things. And, I just want to go back to what you said about steadiness and monotonous and just share with everybody out there and say that, you speak the truth on that 100%. Oftentimes, being an entrepreneur is the most monotonous thing you can do, and it is in that repetition that you win. And if anything
highly rewarding, though.
Yeah, well, if anything's was my downfall in the past, it was that. I'm a highly creative type, so I tend to, kind of want to be off and running to the next thing every minute, and routine, I fight it a little bit. And the reality is that hurt me in the beginning as an entrepreneur. And I had to get over it, and I had to realize that repetition is very powerful.
Sure.
So, oh my gosh.
Also, in that, kind of keep your eyes out. In about 90 days, I've partnered with another gentleman. He's a businessman. That we have created a course, and it's how to transition your life and live a successful, significant life. So I'm going to be teaching. It's a 6-module, 12-video series that's going to be available, should be out by the end of the summer.
Excellent. Aaron, you tell me when that's ready, and I will shout it out to the world.
Thanks,
because,
I appreciate that.
Yeah, your stuff is so good. So let's get into the questions with impact round. So 1 to 2 sentence answers. Sound good?
Sure.
Okay, the first one is, what do you think is the greatest joy about being an entrepreneur?
You're in charge primarily of your destination. Someone else is not.
What's your morning routine look like?
I'm very regimented. I start very early. I was up at 3:50 this morning, but that's a little earlier even for me. I usually get up between 4 and 5 o'clock. I start out with scripture because I'm a person of faith. So the first half hour is through prayer and meditation, scripture reading, and then I'll sit for 10 or 15 minutes, kind of get my day centered, be quiet, and then I'll get into my business, coaching or returning emails, just like the rest of your audience. We have things that we have to do on a regular schedule, but my day starts early. It takes a lot of discipline to go to bed early, and so I'm in bed, 10:30 every night. I'm
up at 4 a.m. every day, so I love the morning.
Yeah.
What's the one thing you do to kind of, turn the beat around when your mood is down or things aren't going your way?
Yeah, it's got to be listening to positive podcasts. I love to read blogs. I love TED Talks. Just things that are stimulating and motivating. Maybe I'm a bad citizen by saying what I'm fixing to say, but I don't watch the news. I haven't watched the news in probably 5 or 6 years. I can hear from my friends if it's really important, and things that pertain to my business, I can go out on an RSS feed and get it if I want to hear it. But I just don't believe in filling your mind with all the things that I don't have any control over.
Nice. So don't weigh yourself down with the negativity. So I'm a big believer in stalking people who are doing amazing things. And you and I talked a little bit about this. I was stalking you. That's how I decided I wanted to get you on the Innovation Roundtable, because I want to see what they're doing in real time, see how they do things, what they're doing, why. Who is one person you think the Innovation Roundtable should stalk?
Oh, me. There's some great guys out there doing a lot of great things. Dan Miller has been a real mentor of mine for 15 years, and Dan's done some great things. He knows how to live life well, and he's very successful. And Dan Miller.
Great. What should everyone listening know about what you do and how you do it?
Well, I'm a life and business coach. I do consulting for businesses and coaching, and I have two groups called Iron Sharpens Iron. They're mastermind groups, and we coach men, as I told you earlier, and these men are in these mastermind groups as well. We're starting a new group June the 1st, and it'll be our third group. These fill up pretty quick, so if you're interested, give me a shout. We meet on Zoom. It's a video conference room. We meet the same time every week. It's 1 hour. We meet with the same 10 guys every week. We study books together. We go through trials and tribulations. We do what's called man in the middle, where you are the center of attention on a regular basis. We talk about your business. We help you. Quite honestly, there's so many resources. There's so many people that get introductions through this. You can't even exercise using all the introductions, the relationships, and the resources. That's the reason that really, really wealthy people in years gone by have attributed their success, because when you're around successful people, more success comes because they introduce you to the people that are doing things.
That's right. What are the 3 actions the Innovation Roundtable should take immediately after listening to this interview? And I will just throw in that one of them is go to viewfromthetop.com/Tamara and download those amazing resources. So what are the other 2?
Well, I would just say we don't need as many activities as far as more activities. It's just more implementation. I tell people regularly, knowledge is a great thing, but without execution, it's worthless. And if you were to take these 3 documents that I've given you, you'll see a significant change in your life if you'll implement them on a long-term basis. If you think you're going to do it for a week or 10 days or even 30 days and it change your life radically, it's not going to happen. It's the long term. I want people to be marathoners, not sprinters. Look at the long haul in doing whatever you're doing. Delay gratification all you can and implement more.
I'm just taking a note here. It's so good. Okay, so the last question is, so I like to reveal something about myself and my guests, the things that I think people would be surprised to know, like I happen to be a sci-fi geek, so I'm big into Doctor Who. Half the people out there don't even know what I'm talking about because that's how geeky it is, and that's okay. I watch it every Friday night with my kids on Netflix. So what's one thing the audience would be surprised to know about you?
Well, I don't know if it's surprising or not, but the majority of my off time is spent with my grandchildren. I have 4 grandchildren that's 5, 6, 7, and 12 years old. And you would think a guy like me that's invested so much energy and effort into business, I'd be hanging out with all these superstars in business. But on my off time, quite honestly, I'd rather be with my wife and my 4 grandchildren.
Grandkids keep you young, don't they?
Oh, they're a blast. I'm fortunate to have had children early. I'm 54 years old now, and I have 4 grandchildren that we can get out and get in our Enos in my backyard. All of us have Enos. We'll get out. I live in the woods, and so we'll stretch them up in the trees, and we just have a blast. Or got a tire swing out there that's 40-foot rope. We play with it. I'll swing with them. Whatever. I just enjoy being with my grandkids and my wife because she's my best friend.
Well, Aaron, this has been a pleasure, and I got to tell you, I want to come out and swing on that tire swing. That sounds fantastic.
It's awesome. I love it.
Well, Aaron, thank you so much for being on Innovation Roundtable. This has been a wealth of insight and wisdom, and we at the Innovation Roundtable appreciate that.
Thank you very much. I really enjoyed it.
Thanks for hanging out with us inside Launch Street. When you're ready to take your game to the next level, join the thousands of others that are upping their innovation edge on GoToLaunchStreet.com, the top online education resource and community platform for innovators looking to use innovation to get measurable results. GoToLaunchStreet.com.